De CITA die heeft op deze vrijdag dan hun Barometer Survey gepresenteerd. Er zijn in de afgelopen periode 2 surveys geweest. En deze zijn dan uitgevoerd door Nikos, welke staat voor NGO Instituut voor Kaderontwikkeling en Onderzoek in Suriname, onder leiding van Widjai Schalkwijk. En dit project die is bekostigd door de IDB. En de presentatie van de surveys die vond dan op deze vrijdag plaats.
The type of research that we conduct is more national research. I know sometimes you get a small survey in your email box to fill it in, but what we do is more large-scale surveys and really looking that you get the right respondents and focusing on the survey, filling the survey in so that you can have conclusions, but also data analysis of the right respondents and the right database to make informed decisions. But I will tell you a bit more about the methodology. First I will give an introduction, what is a barometer survey, then the methodology, then we will present the research findings, and we will have some conclusions, and actually the launch of the 3rd survey, but we can give you a bit more information because we actually launched it 2 weeks ago, so we already have data of 101 companies, and we can give you some small insights already on what is now actually happening within the business sector, the exporters and foreign investors. Okay. What is a barometer survey? It's not a too-long survey, so you can fill it in 15 minutes, even a bit shorter, because we want companies and especially CEOs filling it in, or people from senior management who have a good overview of what is happening. So it's not too long, but it gives a lot of information on the business climate, on the exporting climate, on obstacles that they face, but also maybe some companies that are doing very well, but we can also learn from them, because sometimes we only focus on the negative part, but we also try to focus on what can we learn from the people or the companies that are actually doing very well in the sector. And the barometer survey is, and that's kind of unique in Suriname, it's a repeated survey. So you can have some trend analysis, we call it a longitudinal study. So we've done one in 2024, 2025, and now we're doing one in 2026, so that you can see where is the trend going and what is happening within the business climate, exporting companies and foreign investors. We will not be able to tell you everything about the barometer survey, but yesterday we have put the full report on the website of CITA. So if you want the full report, it's 100 pages, a bit longer, but if you're very interested, you can just go to the CITA website on the news page and you can download the full report. It's transparent and everybody can download it and you can look for yourself. What we will do is present the main findings, but for instance, what we did in the report is sometimes focusing more on exporting companies, sometimes making some data analysis on foreign investors or the larger companies. We won't be able to do that today, otherwise we would stay here for a long time. So we will just present the main findings, but in the report you can have some specific, more in-depth data analysis. Okay, there have been some business surveys in Suriname. I will first talk about that and then talk about what we have done. For instance, there was a productivity, technology and innovation survey in 2014, and in 2012 a Latin American country enterprise survey, and there were 152 firms in that survey. But it was quite limited because it only looked at 2 sectors, the services sector and the manufacturing sector. The most serious obstacles in that survey were macroeconomic and cost finance. You will see kind of a trend line also in our survey. Then the Statistic Bureau of Suriname did not actually do a survey, but what we call in Dutch a bedrijventelling. They just counted how much companies are in Suriname and real basic information, how many employees do you have, in which sector do you operate. So it's not so much a survey, but it gives nice data on all of the companies in Suriname, excluding the agricultural sector. They counted 12,475 businesses in Suriname, but less than 200 companies were large companies. Of all of the companies operating in Suriname, and with large companies, they only mean companies with more than 100 employees. So that gives you a bit of information about the business sector in Suriname, a lot of small, medium enterprises, and only a few large companies. But these are all of the businesses. What we have done in our barometer survey is only focus on businesses that are exporting and foreign investors operating in Suriname. So it's much more of a subset of all of the businesses. Then you had an enterprise survey of the World Bank, and they left out some sectors, agriculture, fishing, mining, but that was one of the surveys that was done. The largest constraints there were also access to finance, political instability, and an inadequately educated workforce. That were the main findings of that enterprise survey in 2018. And in 2019, there was a smaller survey by the ILO, and they also had constraints, bribery, with regard to regulations, inefficient custom procedures, deficient quality of higher and vocational training, and difficulty in hiring adequate personnel. So these were the main findings. What you see is already kind of a trend in all of the different surveys. After 2019, there was not really a large survey. I know the VSB has done one survey among businesses, but then we come actually to the survey that we have done. First, what we had to do is, because there is not a database on all of the foreign investors operating in Suriname and exporting companies, so we had to make our own database. In the previous two surveys, it comprised of 588 companies, but we're updating it every time. So now we have 763 companies. So these are companies that are foreign investors in Suriname or exporting. But with exporting, it's kind of a broad definition, because we also included tourism companies. So if you have a lot of tourists that are not from Suriname, but from other countries, you are also included in this database. But also if you're a Surinamese company, but for instance, you are also operating in Guyana, so not exporting products, but you have a company in Guyana, as Assyria or others have companies, you are also seen as an exporting company. So exporting company is a bit of a broader definition. So we did a first barometer survey in September 2024. After that, we wanted to focus more on some of the main findings. So we then did an in-depth interview analysis on 15 key stakeholders, top CEOs, which we spoke with sometimes 2 hours long. That data we will not present today, but it is in the full report. So for instance, if there is a constraint about the workforce or the bureaucratic hurdles, then you can find much more in-depth information on that part in the report. But we will not focus on that today. And then we did a second barometer survey in April 2025. The FID was in between. And then we've done this third survey. This is after the elections, and this is an ongoing survey for 1 or 2 weeks still in March 2026. So if you're from the private sector, all of these companies have received the survey, and maybe also a call. Even if you're in Australia, you will receive calls from us, and we keep on stalking you until you fill it in. And so if you're here and you haven't filled it in, please participate so that we have more data. Okay, what we did to make the database is we actually focus on all of the data sources that we can think about in Suriname. So I mean, going to the Oil and Gas Expo, registering all of the companies and all of the stands, but also asking embassies, the Chinese embassies, which Chinese companies are in Suriname, or the Brazilian embassy. So we've done all of this information of a lot of data sources, also the VSB, the Customs Authority, actually everything you can think of. And that's how we came up with all of these companies, and it's being updated on a regular basis. So that's how we comprised the companies that are in the database. And together with what you do mostly is you take a sample. In other countries where they do a barometer survey, they take a sample of the directory, the database, and then in the sample you only ask those companies the questions, and maybe the next barometer survey you take another sample so that you don't get a lot of survey fatigue. But because Suriname is not too large of a country, we have actually included all of the companies. So this is not a sample. What we've done, we have just sent the survey to all of the companies in Suriname, so that also makes it unique. Okay, and in the questionnaire you have some general information about the company, the turnover of the company, how many employees, in which sectors do they operate, are there goods or services sectors, the size of the company, but also the website, etc. The ownership, are there female in the top of the company, or is it female owned? The business climate, the confidence. If you look at the coming 12 months in Suriname, what is the business climate looking for you as a company, the business obstacles, and also future expectations. Do you expect to invest more? Do you expect to take more employees, etc.? Okay, let's first look at the first survey and the second survey. So in the second survey we had 158 companies participating, and in the first survey it was 178 companies. Around 25 to 30% of the companies. The database was a bit smaller than 588 companies. That's quite large for a business survey. If you have 20 to 30% participating. In most of the other surveys that I mentioned, it was much less. And we have exporting companies and also foreign investors, but this number can exceed this number because sometimes you have a foreign investor in Suriname that is also exporting. So you can sometimes be in both categories. But you see, there are more exporting companies, but also think about the tourist companies and companies also operating outside of Suriname, but whose main base is Suriname, than foreign investors. But in the report, we've sometimes made specific data analysis just on one of the foreign investors or the exporting companies. I won't go into detail on this slide, but you can find it also in the report. But what I just want to mention is that we have all kinds of sectors represented in this survey. This is products, goods, but also, we can also put a PowerPoint, I think, online, because I see a lot of people making pictures, so we can also put it online, I think, yes. So you can have the full PowerPoint also. And these are the services. What you see is that we have all kinds of categories. For instance, BPOs are also in it, tourism and travel companies, transporting companies, construction companies, engineering companies. So it's kind of a very good representation because you have all kinds of different companies. So the data that we will show you in a minute is not just focused on one sector, but it is more of a broad overview of the businesses operating in Suriname. And I think that's very good because this is also what we want as sociologists, that you have kind of a representative sample from the whole database. Okay. The distribution of companies by number of employees. For instance, there were 4% had 250 plus employees. This was from the second survey. And 12% of the companies had 100 to around 250 employees. What you see is there are a lot of companies which have less employees than 50, but that is just because that is a fact in Suriname, as I just mentioned, with the bedrijventelling of the Statistics Bureau. So this is not that it is in our sample, but this is just kind of the general picture in Suriname. A lot of more small, medium-priced entities working in Suriname. Also, if you were a foreign investor, for instance, Total Energies or something like that, we only focus on the employees in Suriname. So not all of your employees in the whole world, but just the employees if you're a foreign investor in Suriname. So that's why sometimes they didn't have a lot of employees, but were still a foreign investor. And this is the turnover of the companies. You see 7% had more than $5 million of turnover every year, and 8% between 1 million and 5 million. So we have some large companies also, and in the report we have some specific data analysis on the larger companies, but also you see a lot of more smaller companies. But as I mentioned, that is something of Suriname, that we have a lot of small and medium-sized companies. With this question, you also had an option, because we don't want people to opt out of the survey, to don't answer the question, and around 1/3 of the companies don't want to provide that information. But all of the other questions, they had to answer. Only this question was not, you didn't have to answer it if you didn't want to.